Good day, everyone. Welcome to the L&D channel, the Learning and Development channel, where you can learn, lead, and make difference. In this video, we will be tackling the session on planning and designing school-based and service training or NSET. So how to plan an INSET so that the NSET will be applied for quality assurance and can also be applied for CPD accreditation so that school leaders will now be able to conduct NSET where the teacher participants can receive CPD credit unit. In this session, we will explain the PD program designing in the context of L&D Models and Frameworks, which includes the ADDIE model and the PRIME-HRM. We are also to identify school-based NSET design components and discuss the school-based NSET design quality standards. So it's expected that after this video, this session, you will be able to propose a school-based NSET plan. So continue watching this video until the end. Our reference is the Memorandum DMOU HROD-2024-1596 entitled Guidelines on the Conduct of Regional Office, Schools Division Office, and School Professional Development Programs for fiscal year 2024. It has also the guidelines on the school level development and implementation of school-based professional development PD programs. So first, you must revisit your experience in a school-based NSET. So you will be reflecting and evaluate your all NSET experiences. So what are those part of the NSET that you like? You have learned what part of the NSET is lacking and what NSET you are longing for. So in the NSETs that you have been a part of or you have been designing NSETs previously, what are the good practices? Should it reflect on what are the desirable experiences that would happen in an NSET? And what learnings have you gained from those NSET? And what does the NSET lack or what does it needs for improvement? And what you have longed, things that could have attained or experienced in the last NSETs that you have been involved with. So one thing that came out is those NSETs that have been conducted earlier in your school should have been of quality. So when we say quality, it is the investment of the best skill and effort possible to produce the finest and the most admirable results. Those NSETs should have conformance to specifications, the degree to which the product meets standards. Those NSETs should have fitness for use or have successfully served the purpose of the user. And those NSETs should have an inherent characteristics of an object that fulfills the requirements of ISO 9000-2015. That's when we think about quality, these are the things that will come into our mind. So in the DepEd Memorandum, DMOU HROD-2024-1596, it states the standard processes for developing and implementing school-based PD programs. Quality standards must be followed in designing school-based PD programs and mechanisms to determine how the PD program conducted in the school was effective. So we will talk on the first model of the learning and development management cycle. As you can see in the model, developing a learning and development program from the ADDIE model starts with A or analysis. The next is designing, development, implementation, and evaluation. So it's complete the word ADDIE. So you start with the analysis. What are the most sought of training of your teachers? What are the needed competencies? So that would be in the analysis. And these competencies that are needed by your teachers must be targeted in the designing, the development, and the implementation of your Inset. And after that, there should be an evaluation. And after the evaluation is happening at all across the 4 stages. Evaluation will also be conducted after the implementation. Evaluation is conducted during the analysis. Evaluation is also conducted during the design and during the development of the PD program or the Inset. So on the analysis, of course, you are assessing the competency, the tools, and the result. On the designing, you are designing what are the course objectives, the content, the methodologies, the evaluation strategies, and the logistics. In the development, you are to develop the learning materials, the session guides, the slide decks, and the implementation that is on the appropriateness and the quality of delivery. After the delivery of the PD program, the Inset was delivered, the intervention management and learner's response and learning acquisition. Was the Inset, was it able to transfer learning and improve the analysis? Or was the competency that lacks by the teacher have been addressed? So another model is the PRIME-HRM model. So we have level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. In the level 1 of maturity, we have transactional. On the proficiency, we have basic. We have level 2 in maturity that we have process defined. That means that the agency, your school, design training programs that use a mix of methodologies that are learner-centered. And with the proficiency, you prepare TAP that includes the terminal and session objectives, topics, and methodologies. And in level 3, you have integrated for maturity, the agency design, various non-training L&D interventions, coaching, job rotation, benchmarking to support the 7P2010 learning principle. In the proficiency, you have advanced, you design non-training L&D interventions such as coaching, job rotation, benchmarking, etc. Then level 4, you have agency strategic. The maturity of the PRIME-HRM is level 4. That means the agency adopts a process for using the M&E data. So the data that was conducted during the evaluation after the Inset was conducted to continually improve and introduce innovations to design of the L&D interventions. So it's a proficiency that's superior. That means you design L&D interventions that require a mix of training and non-training approaches. So this is the model for PRIME-HRM in designing a course. So it starts with preparing training session outline sa basic. Doon sa superior, designing L&D interventions that require a mix of training and non-training approaches. Sa maturity, starts with transactional, starts with mostly use of lectures or presentations. Hanggang sa level 4, that you use the M&E data to improve your L&D interventions. So we will start at level 2. So it is in level 2 where we are designing the PD programs and set. So we are at level 2. We encourage all schools to be at that level 2. So in the school-based PD program development and implementation process, we have this matrix. So it starts with needs assessment, planning, designing, learning resource development. So during the learning resource development, there must be quality assurance. Once it is quality assured, the learning resource development, these are the slides, the session guides. Once you have been issued the quality assurance certificate, you can now apply for accreditation in the PRC. So once you have submitted it to PRC, it will be part in the repository of Inset, accredited and quality assured Inset. And then after it was quality assured and PRC accredited, you will now have the delivery of the Inset. During the delivery, there is monitoring and evaluation. After the delivery, there must be a workplace application, implementing the learnings that are gained during the delivery, and the outcome, the impact of the training to the teachers. So the result of the monitoring and evaluation will be used again in the identifying the professional development priorities, which will in turn be used for the needs assessment evaluation, and the cycle will continue. So the needs assessment is on determining the professional development needs of the teachers and school leaders in key performance areas, and identifying the competency gaps that affect individual and organizational performance. During the needs assessment, we are to establish the baseline data on the competency levels of teachers and school leaders. We provide the basis for the tracking of teachers and school leaders' progress towards the target levels of proficiency. It is a non-negotiable requirement for any PD program proposal. Its results must inform the subsequent PD program design and development process. That's during the needs assessment. So there are levels of needs assessment. You have the individual PD needs assessment, the group PD needs assessment, and the organizational PD needs assessment. So individual, that's to improve the performance of an individual. The group is the performance requirements of the specific role or functions. The organizational PD needs assessment, the strategic directions and priorities to strengthen the competencies to implement organization-wide reforms or programs. After the needs assessment, we are to identify the needs of the teachers based on the drawn data, and we are to use the self-assessment tools, the classroom observation tools, the individual development plan, the results of classroom-based assessment, instructional supervisory plan, the school's technical assistance plan, performance and agreement, and the performance monitoring and coaching form. So these are the tools that the school leaders, the designers of Inset, must use in identifying the needs of the target group of teachers. So in analyzing the data and prioritizing the professional development needs, we are following the SUG matrix. S for seriousness. How important are the outcomes in this area? How significant are the performance and competency gaps in this area? Then we have the urgency. How much time does the agency have to improve the performance and competency in this area before any substantial damage occurs? And G is on the growth potential. If the performance or competency is not developed, will the situation improve over time, remain, or worsen? So this SUG matrix has 3 indicators. Is it very serious in terms of seriousness? Number 2 is very serious, number 2 serious, number 1 is less serious. For urgency, 3 for very urgent, 1 for urgent, 1 is for less urgent. And for growth potential, number 2 is great extent, number 2 moderate extent, and number 1 is low extent. So we have, for example, we have identified PD needs in the first column, and we have identified the indicators based on seriousness, urgency, growth potential. So the highest total of the seriousness, urgency, and growth potential is the first priority, engaging learners in HATS-based teaching and learning processes. And the lowest sum total is the last priority, that is establishing, sustaining positive learning climate. So we have analyzed the data and we have come up with the top 4 priority PD needs of your class. So the number 1 priority is on engaging learners in higher order thinking during the teaching and learning process. And if we will look at the PPST, it is stated in domain 1.5.2. So we are to map the identified PD needs to the PPST, to the PPSS, the PPSS domain strands and indicators. Okay, after the needs assessment, you have identified the priority needs assessment and you have mapped the competency. You are to do the planning. You are going to determine what are the topics to be covered, to determine the appropriate PD program, to address the set of objectives, and to clarify the workplace development objectives. So We all know that the prioritized PD needs based on our data analysis is on engaging learners in higher order thinking during teaching and learning process. And if we will map it in the PPST indicator, it is in domain 1.5.2, 1.5.3. Next is in the planning, we are to identify the topics to be covered. So the topics is on developing higher order thinking skills. And under the NAIAP core programs, you have the 4 core programs of NAIAP. We have induction, career progression, and introductory, and special program. So the induction program are conducted, and the SDO and Inset is also conducted in the school for the induction. Wala nang induction doon sa regional office for the teachers. However, the regional office can do provide technical assistance on the implementation of IPBT or induction program for beginning teachers. But induction program will happen at the Inset or the SDO level. The regular programs will happen like for career progression. Those are the subject content program, and the master classes will happen at the 3 governance levels. The special programs will also be conducted in the RO, SDO, and during your Inset. Now that we have identified the topics, we must also identify the workplace development objectives. These are the competencies, the outputs, the outcomes, and the impact, the gains, the expected gains from the L&D program, from the Inset that you are proposing, from the topics that you are proposing. WDOs, or the workplace development objectives, are also referred to as the learning results chain. So we need to clarify the workplace development objectives. The workplace development objectives, in the competencies that we are targeting, we must have an output and the outcomes of that output during the delivery, and what will be the impact to the learners. So it answers this question: what job, task, or roles in the form of knowledge, skills, and attitude the participants should be able to acquire from the PD program? What concrete outputs the participants should be able to produce at the end of the PD program to demonstrate application of competencies? So that's for the output. What participants should be able to perform back in their workplace to demonstrate behavioral change or change in performance? That's the outcome. And what improvements in the condition of the learners, positive changes in the organizational systems, the processes, may be expected as a result of participants' improved competency and performance. So in designing an Inset, we must take note of these 4 workplace development objectives. What are the competencies? What are the outputs in red color? What are the outputs? That's red color. What are the outcome? So that's back in the workplace to demonstrate the change, and what would be the impact that is expected from as a result of the participants' improved competency and performance. So in doing so, when you identify those workplace development objectives, you will come up with your enabling objectives for the competencies, the terminal objectives for the output at the end of the delivery of the PD program, the application objectives on the outcomes, and the result objectives on the impact of the training program. So for example, in our example, the topics to be covered is on higher order thinking skills. SOLO, structure of observed learning outcomes. So the workplace development objectives under the enabling objectives are the following: discuss the levels of SOLO in relation to the Bloom's taxonomy, explain how the SOLO framework is applied in teaching strategies, activities, under the identified learning approaches. C, examine the learner's response based on SOLO framework. And letter D, determine facilitating and hindering factors in incorporating SOLO framework in the teaching and learning process for HATS development. So those are key knowledge, the skills and attitudes that the participants are expected to gain from the training. Next, is on the terminal objectives, the output of the training objectives. By the end of the 3-day training, the participants will be able to map effective teaching strategies to the learning competencies, formulate competency and soul-based assessment items promoting HATS. And for the result objective, as a result of the participants' improved pedagogical and assessment practices, learners gain and improve performance in large-scale assessment and the real-life challenges ready. And the application objective, back in the workplace or back in the classroom, the teachers will be able to incorporate the SODO framework in assessing the learner's cognitive level, thereby informing the teaching and learning process for the HATS development. So we are done with the planning, the first 3 parts. Number 4 is we are now to schedule the activities. So we are designing the program, the learning resource, the slides, the session guides, the delivery, the monitoring and evaluation. We are also number 5, identifying the program management team, who will be the welfare officer, who will be the documenter, who will be the logistics officer, and who will be the M&E officer, and what are their terms of references. Number 6, identify the facilities, the equipment, the materials, and other logistics needed to implement the PD program. And number 7, estimate the budget requirements and identify the fund source. So it's during planning. Next is on designing. Designing is on outlining and formulating training competencies, learning objectives, content, methodologies, resources, assessment outputs, and resources. So you are now to ensure the comprehensiveness and coherence of the training components. So during designing, the school will use the school-based Inset training plan or the Inset plan. So the Inset plan, you are to provide the details in the spaces designated as required, the school name, the school ID, the address, the telephone, the email address, the focal person, email address of the focal person, and the mobile. Then we have on page 2, the Inset profile. You are to provide the title, the rationale. On the rationale, you must discuss the reasons for proposing the PD program supported by the data on the teacher's professional development needs based on relevant research and legal basis. So most of the time, the rationale will come out from the data analysis that you have gathered. Next, we have the program description, where you're going to provide the workplace development objectives that were mentioned. Then the professional standards that are covered, because in the earlier part, we have mapped the PPST standards covered by the identified topics. And then what are the domains, the strands, and indicators. Then you're also to give the profile of the target participants, particularly their career stage, their job group, their position, the subject area, grade level, etc. It must be very specific. Picture 1, teaching what subject, what grade level, and what is the career stage. How many are the number of participants, how many male and how many female. And the delivery platform, is it in person, online, hybrid, or offline, modular. Indicate the dates of the implementation as well. So that is on the rationale. You are to indicate there the basis on the result of the competency-based professional development needs assessment. Mentioned earlier, you do have the individual development plans of the teachers, the depth and priorities across levels, the learners' learning outcomes, and etc. So under the rationale also, the proposed PD program's content and methodologies are justified and supported by literature or theories under legal basis, David Issuance's Republic Act 15. So on the set of workplace development objectives, again, the articulation of these objectives must follow the SMART principle: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bounded. The workplace development objectives are logically articulated to support the development of the target professional standards, strengths, and indicators. Do not use stated verbs. We have an example to describe how solo framework comes alive through activities and learning approaches that support higher order thinking skills. So instead, our session objectives must be to describe how solo framework comes alive. So that's the stated verbs through activities of learning approaches that support higher order thinking skills. The recommendation, you're going to specify, state the behavior that is expected to be demonstrated and avoid adding other unnecessary and measurable verbs. This could be directly stated into design HATS-based activities in various solo levels. Do not use stative verbs. Affirm the importance, like appreciate the value, like acquire technical skills, influence potential learning resource developers, lead in the quality assurance process, manifest credibility in performing roles supervisors for a while. So we can use some of the objectives that are stated in the taxonomy of educational objectives by Bloom's, Engelbart, Forst, E.G. Hill, Crowell in 1956. So at the outermost level, you have the ways of students can demonstrate their learning. In the second core, we call the outer core, you have the action verbs, and on the inner core, we have the domains of learning. So in the comprehension, have application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation, and knowledge. So for example, grounded in the SOLO framework, this 3D program will engage the teachers in theoretical and practical learning episodes, centering on pedagogy and assessment, supporting the development of learners' higher order thinking skills. Specifically, as a result of the participation, the participants improve pedagogical and assessment practices, learners gain and improve performance in large-scale assessment, and be real-life challenges ready. Application objectives. Back in the classroom, the teachers will be able to incorporate the SOLO framework in assessing learners' cognitive level, thereby informing the teaching and learning process for HATS development. Terminal objective. By the end of the 3D program, the participants will be able to map effective teaching strategies to the learning competencies, and we have also the enabling objectives as described earlier. So you have the target professional standards. So the target must be aligned to the professional standards, the PPST, domain, strength, and indicator, at least one. So you have here 1.5.2, 1.5.3. Then we have the profile of the target participants. So for example, we have grade 11 and 12 teachers across learning areas. So grade level breakdown. How many are grade 11? How many are grade 12? What are their learning areas? What are their positions and sex as well as their age? So let's have the breakdown. After that is the Inset content details. So in here, you are going to set the session objectives. The session objectives must be smart, logically articulated to support the development of target professional standards. So setting session objectives, the further breakdown enabling objectives is into smaller bite-sized learning units to describe what participants will be able to do after learning a session. Then session objectives are sufficient to support the attainment of the target enabling objective, and session objectives are attained as the program progresses. So we have sample here of session objectives 1, 2, and 3. And we have to select and organize the content. The contents are the appropriate and adequate to support the attainment of the learning objectives and expected outputs. Then contents are accurate and based on credible sources of information. Number 3, for subject content-based ED programs, contents are aligned with the curriculum standards. Selection and organization of content. Content are organized according to the most appropriate sequence and structure. So our contents may come in forms of facts, concepts, theories, processes, and principles. Selecting the session contents. So we need to organize the prioritized content areas according to the most appropriate sequence and structure. So the sequence is the order of presenting the content and conducting related activities. The structure is the relationships of clustering of content. The task-centered. So we need to arrange the content areas and their related activities by their relationships to the job task. It is particularly helpful when there is a specific order of doing tasks on the job. The topic-centered. The major topics are divided into unit headings. This is useful when a lot of information needs to be presented. Problem-centered. We can structure the content and related activities around problems. This is helpful when participants are expected to understand and find solutions to problems. We can also organize according to some progression of movement, concrete to abstract, practical to theoretical, present to future, observation to result. For example, we have the topics here. Start with higher order thinking skills in the classroom and the words used for lower, higher in the original solo model and the solo in the assessment. So you see it is arranged in order. Then we have to also indicate the variety of activities, the methodology. So the soundness of methodology, the learning activities shall be active, experiential, social, and goal-oriented. So we are to use, recognize best practices, motivation, mood-setting activities, and modeling. Indicate how the assigned resource speaker will deliver the content and engage the participants. Identify all learning resource materials to support the delivery of the sessions. So indicate the relevant learning resource. So the common outlines in designing methodology are, first is the 4A's approach. So the 4A's approach starts with the introduction, starts with welcome to the class, welcome to the new learning unit session, then followed by the topic outline, the objectives, and what the participants are expected to perform or what output are they are expected to do. Then you have the first A of the 4A's activity, engage the participants in learning activity where they will encounter, experience, and begin to acquire the knowledge, skills, and attitudes for the session. The participants are given a retrospective view of the contents and become curious and interested. Present the instructions clearly and identify the materials that you are going to use in your activity. Then we have the analysis. Allows the participants to process their new experience, to give context to the newly encountered acquired KSAs. How the participants draw connections between the new knowledge and skills, their relevant experiences, what they already know and can do. The participants gain a wider perspective of the content and draw closer to its core. The participants are encouraged to think critically as they refine and concretize their perspectives during the analysis. Then we have the abstraction. Guide the participants in pointing the session's main points, the concept and details. Concretize the abstracted main points and concepts by adding new knowledge, introducing new skills, and instilling new values. Deepen participants' understanding of the content by bringing in the real-world scenarios and materials. Participants internalize how their newly acquired knowledge, skills, and attitudes could be put to good use. And the last is we have the application. The participants materialize, practice what they have previously internalized. Provide participants the adequate opportunities to apply what they have learned. This could be in the forms of producing tangible outputs or demonstrating actions. Inform the participants how their application of learning will be evaluated and scored. Rubrics must be presented and thoroughly discussed. Give the participants ample time to reflect on their learning experience. So we have on the first part you have the warm-up, introduction. Number 2, you have a mini lecture. Number 3, you have the end session, interactive activity 1. Number 4, end session, interactive activity 2. And 5 is summarizing, is another methodology. So for example, in the conduct of HATS, the activities, the methodologies are stated there. The activity, activity sheets, the presentation of outputs, the analysis, then you have the abstraction. So in putting in the methodology part of the Inset plan, we will be guided with these questions. What can you say about the activity? How can you determine the complexity level of a learning task and learning responses using the solo taxonomy? How do you ensure consistency and accuracy when sorting learning task responses into appropriate solo taxonomy levels? And how does the solo taxonomy help design appropriate learning experiences in the learners? So these are the guide questions that can be given during the analysis. It's the guided inquiry. Next is on determining the strategies, assessment strategies, and tools. So the mechanisms to determine if the objectives have been met. Number one, use varied and sufficient formative and summative assessments to assess the participants' progress in the target competencies. Provide appropriate assessment tools and rubrics. So in the assessment strategies and tools, we have put in there how are they going to be assessed. And next is to determine the session outputs. The session outputs are concrete, reflection, journal, TE plan, lesson exemplar, rubrics, worksheets. So those are the expected outputs. So in this example, the assessment strategies accomplished and completed assessment questions reflecting the solo levels. So their output is accomplished and completed categorized sample learning task and learner's response activity sheet 1 from the activity phase. So those are the outputs. And then you have to estimate the time requirement. So sessions must be appropriately sequenced and adequate time. The dates of the implementation do not interfere with the school-based instructionally relevant activities, especially the actual classroom teaching of teachers. So it should be outside the actual classroom teaching of teachers. So for example, we have the duration here, we have 90 minutes. Next is assign the resource speakers. The resource speakers, the subject matter experts, CVs, curriculum vitae, reflect expertise, the relevant to the PPST domain transmitted covered in her sessions. So this resource person must have the relevant experience as to the topic, the domains, the indicators of the PPST that is assigned to her. So this is checked during the quality assurance and during the evaluation of the PD program. So for example, we have the resource person is a principal of a national high school. Next is promote gender equality, disability, and social inclusion. That is GEDSI. The training elements like the participant selection criteria, the activities, the learning materials, the resource speakers, the monitoring and evaluation promote maximum engagement of participants from all backgrounds, disability, age, gender, religious, and ethnic backgrounds. Provide the opportunity for the work-based application, the application of learning. It allows the opportunity for crafting the implementation of the WAP, align the WAP with the set application objective. So let's pause and take for a while. In red, stop. What current practices that does not facilitate effective development of school-based Inset you tend to stop? For the yellow, back in the school, what area or aspect of the school-based Inset development will you have to sit down and think about further? And what actions do you intend to continually do to enhance the development of the school-based Inset? So these are the things that we need to think of in order to propose, design an Inset plan that is effective and delivered well. So in designing professional development programs like Inset, we must think of quality. If you have questions about this video, about this session, don't hesitate to write down in the comment section and watch more videos related to how your Insets can be used for CPD units, earning CPD units, and for submission for quality assurance. For more videos, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos about professional development programs. Thank you and mabuhay.